What's up, y'all? In this video, I'm going to be going over my entire ClickUp setup, going over every single component that it takes to run my lead generation service. I'll show you how it's set up. I'll show you the back end. But more importantly than anything else, I want to share the journey of building this ClickUp setup over a year. As you could see, I made a video shared to a group of peers, and at the time, I had said that the setup is 10 to 20% done. 1.5 years later, it's pretty much closer to being done, like 60, 70%. But something that you will actually notice that's very, 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 very counterintuitive to what I initially thought is that my ClickUp setup today is even more simpler than it was a year ago. So you would think that I made no progress, but in reality, we made tons and tons of progress. It's just we didn't get progress in terms of complexity. And so let's get started with why this is important. And then after I explain why this is so important, we're going to go into every single one of these components. So this is just a simple illustration of like a sun, right? So if you had a sun and you were trying to burn a hole through a piece of paper, but you don't have a magnifying glass, let's say, what's going to happen is that the piece of paper is just going to get warmed up. But the moment you add a magnifying glass, you then hone in more focus on that specific area, then it burns like this over here. And so with these automations, what you will notice from this is that magnifying glass. We're only focusing on the areas that make the impact. Everything else we archive, and every single day, that's something that I'm always working on. And by the way, something I'm probably archiving very soon is this automation over here that generates content ideas. It was great. It showed me viral ideas, but it's not had the impact that I need. And what that causes is bloat. We don't want bloat. If you want like the best operations that seamlessly function, bloat is just what you want to avoid. Because if I hadn't done what I've done, I would have 100 plus automations that are actively running today. And so, as you can imagine, that's going to cause a lot of headaches because you're never going to know where things are. You're always going to be stuck. But, anyways, let's dive into this ClickUp setup. We've got the first thing that happens, which is onboarding a client. We send them a form over here. Something I've actually been liking recently is just doing this over the phone. So over the phone, I'd be like, hey, what's your email? Who's the billing contacts? Email recipients. This just removes all of the back and forth. So this is something I'm doing on the phone, but it's also very helpful because it's genuinely streamlines the engagement and makes it easier for us to work with them. Okay, so we've got the form submitted. Next up, we set up the clients. And so setting up the clients, we simply input them here. And by the way, while the simplicity is on the back end, front end, like there's tons of complexity going on in the automations in the back end. So like all of these things, like as you can see, we've got 49 here, 38 modules, 9, 11 modules. We go to this one over here, 8, 9. So all of the complexity is really in the automations, but from the front end, we're really just trying to get a client from step 0 all the way to the end. And so if it's a lead gen client, we go from new to set up domains to active, and or a trial. And then that's going to do a several different automations, but that's the general gist. And if you're curious what it looks like if we were to open the client, these are the custom fields. So we get the billing contacts, we've got the email recipients, we've got the messaging platform. And again, these things are coming from the onboarding form when we had previously asked the client, like, hey, tell me about this stuff. And so now that we have this information, we're basically done with the client onboarding. By the way, this is like one of the hugest impact things, because it's like if we know the messaging platform, for example, we're going to leverage this in our future automations to send them notifications. If we have the Google Drive folder, we can easily navigate to the Google Drive folder. If we have the Smart Lead folder, we can easily navigate to the Smart Lead folder. All of this stuff makes a huge impact. Okay, so once we've done this, we then move on to the next step, which is communication with clients. And so we have cadences that come through every so often. And we basically just write emails. And so it's basically like, hey, we've got a subject, We've got an email draft. Usually they come with templates, they come with the email recipients. And from our end, we simply just have to review them, make sure that they're accurate, and then we send them over. And the process to do that is to send a test email, send email to client. And so again, all of the complexity is on the back end. Everything on the front end is meant to be like super seamless to where anyone can do it. The more complexity you add, the harder it becomes for you to remember how every single one of these pieces are working together. And if it's hard for you to remember how each of these pieces are working together, then you can imagine no one else is going to know how all of those pieces are going to work together. And so, for example, if you move this from to do to send a test email, what do you think should happen? Well, intuitively, I would assume that we're going to get a test email sent to us, right? But if there's a completely 360 automation happening with some crazy things going on, again, maybe you might know that, but if you onboard other people, they're not going to know. So it makes a massive impact. By the way, now that we've gone through two different components, I want to explain this extension that you're seeing over here. So you'll notice that we've got create campaigns, list building, client funnel, and all of these different components. So these are the different components that it takes to run a lead generation agency, as I've determined. And so I need to create the campaigns. I need to have the lists for those campaigns, and I need to refill those lists every single day. And then I need to get the inbox management taken care of. We're going to get to that in a second. And so all of these different components are all of the different tasks that I need to do to run my lead generation agency effectively. And so with that, it comes to the structure. So you'll notice that we have a master space, and then with that space, we have lists. And so we've got clients, client comms, campaigns, domains, client funnel. Why is this the case? This is because every single client has client communication, they have campaigns, they have domains, and they have a client funnel. And so because we're running a productized service, it actually makes tons and tons of sense to set it up in this structure. Now, if you run like a custom web dev agency, for example, where one client you might be building a website for them and there's different sprints going on and all of these different things, then it might make more sense to structure it with projects, subfolders, with folders, and then lists underneath those folders. It might also make sense to do subtasks underneath each of those tasks. It might make sense to do checklists and all of those different things. I don't do none of that. I have uh, simple tasks, no subtasks. We don't do subtasks. If we have, and we also don't do any checklists. If we have any things that I need to take care of, they're going to come through in the comments. And so we would assign ourselves a comment, and then we would work that comment accordingly. And so for if for example, we do a send a test email, let's actually do it. It doesn't have we don't need an email recipient. As you can see, there's a comment that comes through, which is basically like, hey, a test email was sent to you. If it looks good, proceed to the next status. If it needs adjustment, move it to the previous status, then move it to this status again. So this is an example of the comments. So we don't have a checklist. We also don't have the subtasks. Okay, so we're all caught up now. So let's move on to the next thing, which is creating the campaigns. And so creating the campaigns is super simple. We do the same exact thing. So every single one of these, you will notice that they follow a similar theme. And if they didn't follow a similar theme, that's going to cause confusion for everyone. Like anyone who wants to work on this, they'll be like, "Oh, how do you work this task? Or how do you work this other task?" When in reality, they should just all follow the same thing. So if you're going to do a project like a folder-based task management system, make sure that it's consistent across every single thing. Okay, so now we've got creating the campaigns. And so this is also very simple. We just create a campaign, create clay table and campaign, update copy, build list, and then active. And so all of this stuff has automations, right? So if I were to like do create table and campaign, this is in the background, duplicating a clay table, duplicating a campaign, changing the sequence of that table, changing the sequence of that changing the structure of that table to fit with this specific playbook. And then in a second, it's going to drop us the campaign URL and the clay table. And at that point, we would then update the copy and build the list and keep working through that. And so that's how we're using all of these automations. Everything on the front end, super simple. Everything on the back end, that's where the complexity lies. Okay, let's move on to the next thing over here, which is building lists. And so once the campaign has gone through all of the different steps, so create the copy, create clay table and campaign, update copy and build list, and then it's active, that means we now are sending emails. And something that we do is we track the campaign analytics and we put them back into ClickUp. And so, in particular, one thing that we're looking for is the not started. And so if the not started ever goes below a certain number, which I believe is 500, then we switch this list building status from completed to do. If it was clicked stopped, we don't change it. If it's complete, we move it back to do. And so this is an example of a campaign where the not started is 0, and so we need to build the list. And so how we build the list, we have the clay table over here, we have the campaign URL over here, and we usually have a list source. And so if we got a list from, let's say, Apollo, we would have the Apollo URL linked here. And so let me just use this URL as a sample URL. Boom. And so this, you can imagine this would be an Apollo URL. So we would simply just go to Apollo, export leads from there, go to the clay table. This clay table is going to finalize to the smart lead campaign. And so we can basically build this extremely quickly. And by the way, when we go to this extension over here, that's where you're seeing this list building. So now we know that we've got one list building task to do. Easy. Okay. And so we can move on to the next step over here, which is creating domains and inboxes. This is also, again, every single, like, you'll notice that there's no difference. Everything is the same. And again, this goes back to the user experience. You want to make it as seamless as possible for you to know exactly what to do at every single point in time. And so as you'll notice, we go from domains purchased, add users to smart lead, and then domain setup completed. Like, easy, right? We know everything, right? Something else that I like about this is that it acts as a very, very amazing database for us to know every single thing about our domains. And so if I want to log into this specific one, is it in Google Workspace? Does it have a Google admin for it? And so if we wanted to go into the Google Workspace for Noel at Afonto.com, we would actually just find the domain group 1, and we would find the Google admin for domain group 1, and that's where this one would lie, right? And so you see how cool that is. But if it was in MailReef, MailForge, all of these other people, we would also be able to very easily know where the domains lie so that we can make the adjustments that we need to make. So this is great. Love it. I use it all the time. Another thing, the sales funnel. And so whenever leads come through, we are able to keep track of them and whether we responded and all of that stuff. And so this is an example of a lead that's in the client funnel. And so I made a massive mistake. I've not responded. They responded back on the 28th. It's been a few days. As you can see, we're able to see how long it's been since they responded, and we've got currently 8 leads in the client funnel. And so how many leads do I need to respond to? It's clear, and it would be here. Exactly what I just showed you. We click on the campaign URL, and then we respond back to the lead. Okay. And then I'm going to speed run through this because we've only got 1 minute, but we've also got a free email lead magnet. This comes from the extension. So we simply put someone's website over here. It drops a task over here. And then from this task, we essentially generate a lead magnet automatically right away. Okay, so that's basically it. That's my entire ClickUp workflow. It's so simple. But I think I made my point, which is that, the reason we build so many automations is to learn the skill. Once you have the skill, you then realize that only like 20% of the things are having 80% of the impact. And so you just realize I could actually just delete all of this stuff and then keep these things and then have my job entirely done. It took a year to learn this. Hope I saved you some time.